and welcome along to this edition of The Final Whistle on LairMedia.tv. And we have an email, and thank you for your comments. It's info@LairMedia.tv. We're going to start off with Fury, the boxing match, the $100 million boxing match or something like that. It's astronomical money, I must say, you know. I wouldn't mind putting on a 10 or 12 stone and going in for that and falling down after 30 seconds. It's unbelievable money. I can't get my head around it, and it's still not all counted up. Now, Derwynne, did you, or your sound is off, I'd say, Derwynne, your microphone. But did you get to see the fight at all, Derwynne, or did you see any of it?
I watched highlights today, but I always listen to boxing on the radio. I think it sounds better.
Excellent. And what did you think about Gypsy King? Of course, you know that he's Irish, you know.
Well, I should have known that was coming.
Dear, I can't believe you actually I'm saying nothing. I can't believe you said that.
A lot of his cousins and relations, I know two of them actually, they're up in Galway. So, I mean, he's from Manchester, obviously. He's born in Manchester, as far as I know. That's Tyson Fury himself. But what did you think of the performance? I mean, he got up off the canvas twice.
Well, I thought he did really well. I mean, he looked so much stronger than the other guy.
Yeah.
Wilder didn't look right at all, did he? Ran out of steam and everything.
There's something the matter with Deontay Wilder, I think. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know what it is. There's no unity in his corner, I noticed during the fight. He didn't seem to be listening to anybody in his corner. That was just me looking. And you look at Fury, everybody around them were buzzing. They were all buzzing. You know, Martin, did you see any of the fight?
I watched this the following day. So I watched it on Sunday. And I kind of felt that, you know, after Fury was knocked down, that he was in total control. And, you know, I was kind of questioning the corner of Wilder that they didn't put him out sooner. Now, subsequently, I've just read that he insisted on the corner not throwing in the towel, no matter what the condition or what state the fight was in. And seemingly after the last fight, when they did throw in the towel, that he sacked the guy that actually did it. So, like, at what point is the actual welfare of the boxer taken into account? And surely that his best interests were served by putting that fight after maybe round 9, maybe round 8. But to go on to the 11th round, like, was just
shocking.
You know, it was just shocking. And like, the way he went out in the end, like, you know, you just wonder what kind of damage it will have long term to the guy. You know, we've all heard stories about boxers and what's happened to them as they go on in years. So, you know, sometimes, like, I just wondered, you know, at what point do the officials come in and like just take it out of the hands of the corner and say, look, this guy is not fit to continue.
Yeah, the referee can make that decision anytime in the fight. So money talks. Yeah. Chris, did you see any of it?
I saw bits of it, but I mean, Martin's point is very important there, because I looked at it myself, where I actually read it on the BBC this evening, where as Martin said, he did sack his trainer over it, and he instructed his current trainer not to throw in the towel. Therefore, my opinion would be, then what is the point of having a trainer? You might as well just go and do it himself. I mean, I think everyone here agrees that the first part of your duty as a trainer is to protect your boxer at all times. And for you to go around and say, I'm not throwing in the towel no matter what, is a dereliction of duty. And he should be investigated, in my opinion, because, you know, you have to throw in the towel. You do have to throw in. There's times when you actually have to do it for the mercy of your charge. It has to be done. It's as simple as that. It's non-negotiable. And for them to admit that, I think they has to be investigated. But boxing won't do that. Okay, that's a fact of the matter. But what it does point out, if you take heavyweight boxing, is this, right? I watched the Joshua fight, and Joshua basically ran out of steam from round 4 onwards. I didn't see all the fight that night, but it seems that Wilder ran out of steam from round 4 or 5 onwards. Andy Ruiz basically lost a fight because he went binging with everything for 6 months. So you kind of wondering, are they getting the big money that these guys are getting? doesn't necessarily reflect the effort that they're putting into their own sport. That they basically seem to be treating it as a big, massive payday instead of, the old saying, you get out of sport what you put into it. Well, boxing seems to be completely different. Now you've got these so-called YouTubers coming on. I mean, within hours, one of these clowns came on and called out Tyson Fury. Now, I guarantee you, at that guy's corner, you wouldn't want to have a trainer. You need an ambulance waiting for him, because basically he will get killed if they go in against him. And it's where the boxing, I always would say that the British Boxing Board of Control was one of the stiffest. Mind the state of Nevada and all that kind of thing, but the British Boxing Board of Control was one of the strongest ones. I mean, they stopped the fight the other day with Chris Eubank's son because there was a problem with his opponent. No other body in professional boxing would have done that. So they have a duty of care to these boxers. But I just get seriously worried now that some of the boxers are not putting in the effort to get the rewards, and somebody is going to get killed in the foreseeable future.
Yes, sure. Joe, we touched on this a couple of weeks back, Joe. Remember the young boxer that was killed in Thailand or somewhere, that was only 19. But
right. Well, I mean, Wilder was taken to hospital after the fight the other night.
Yeah.
Straight away to be checked out and what have you. But, I mean, we talked about it. They don't care what they're putting out anymore. All they care about is that it's a pay-per-view that they want to sell. And it just doesn't matter. And we talked about it. I mean, there's not that many. I mean, how many titles are out there now that they've got?
There's about 8. There's about 8 per division.
There's mountains of.
So it's not like it used to be, where it actually meant something to be the heavyweight champion of the world, because there was only one, and that was it. Now you've got all these offshoots of it that
you're right.
Just it deepens it.
You had to earn your right to fight the champion as well. I know sometimes, but I'm thinking they said, one commentator on the way over the board, we won't labour this too much, so he said that it's the best thriller 3-fight series I've ever seen. And I was checking up his age, and I said to myself, well, there's no way he could have seen the thriller in Manila, the third fight between Ali and Fraser, which both of them beat each other to a standstill in that fight. And to me, there was nothing like it, Obviously, he hadn't taken that into consideration. But we did. But anyway, look, the best of luck to Tyson Fury. We wish him well. He came through hell after 2017. It's a testament of the man. And particularly when you look at himself and his tradition, his family. His father obviously couldn't be at the fight because he served a time in prison. So the Americans, the self-righteous Americans, wouldn't let him into the country. So because he served a prison sentence, but I suppose you could serve on the government and kill a lot of people in America, but you can't win because you served a prison sentence. It's a funny world we live in, lads.
Somebody remind Pat that it's a sports show.
So Joe's in America. What are we talking about? Joe got in.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. How did I manage to get out Gary Honan into America? I don't know.
Somebody has to test the system.
Yeah, he passed with flying colours. Anyway, we know him as Joe Waters, by the way, lads. Okay, just in case people are worried, ranting. This is Joe Waters. Anyway, the final whistle is the programme. We'll move along to soccer. Nations League, I suppose, isn't set the world on fire, but France won it. It is out over the weekend. They beat Spain, and Italy finished third. They beat Belgium. I suppose they're the 4 best teams. I know I'd say that. They're probably the 4 best teams in Europe at the moment. France, Italy, Spain, and Belgium. They probably are. Maybe Portugal might be up there. Our friend Cristiano Ronaldo won his 181st cap for his country, which is an astonishing record for any player. And or maybe Portugal are short, I don't know. Ireland won against Azerbaijan. Now, I think a target for Ireland, a realistic target, looking at the table, is to finish third. I know you might say that if Ireland finished third behind Portugal and Serbia, I think, is it?
Yeah.
I didn't look at it. If they finish third behind Portugal and Serbia, it'll make a huge difference to their seeding. and a huge difference going, and to use that cliche going forward. But it was a good performance. It was a very good performance. England were playing Andorra, was it?
Yeah.
The sheep shearers. So they won. Did they win 5-0? Did they have something like that?
Yeah.
But, did anyone really see any of the soccer, Martin? Did you get to see any of it over the weekend?
I did. I saw the second half of Spain and France, and it was an entertaining game. But I was kind of baffled by the goal that was given for France to actually win the game. When Mbappe looked to be offside, ball was played through. He looked to be clearly offside. The goal was allowed because when the ball was played, he was offside, but it flicked off the Spanish defender as the ball was coming through, and it was deemed a goal.
Well,
which is kind of unusual. I don't think so, Pat. When the ball was played, he was offside. So it wasn't as if the ball deflected off him first, and he was onside. He was actually offside when the ball was played. So it was like a 15-yard pass. Like when it was played, after 4 or 5 yards, he was offside. But then it deflects off the player, and now all of a sudden he's not offside. I couldn't figure it out myself, and that's what decided the game.
Well, the way that the referees have called it and that they interpreted it was that when the Spaniard went to play the ball, it was an attempt to play the ball. So he had played the ball. So because he played it, it's a start. It's a new phase of play that started. And so this is the whole thing that's driving me mad with all of this. We're going to now. We're taking things from other sports and we're saying it's another phase of the game. The guy is standing in an offside position. He's trying to gain an advantage by being in an offside position. And, the pass is made and it's a deflection. Then he's in an offside position. I don't know. It's, and, they have to look at it through VAR and this, that, and the other. And they still can't get it right half the time.
Go on, Daniel. Go on, Derwynne. Sorry.
It goes with that. The linesman not putting the flags up straight away.
Yeah.
I mean, in reality, when the French guy passed that ball through, the flag would have gone up. He's offside. End of story. Whether it's a deflection or not, he's offside. End of story.
Right.
Now they've got this. Don't put the flag up until VAR confirms offside, onside, and it's ridiculous. I mean, he was so far offside. It was silly, wasn't it?
I mean, I looked at last night. I thought the last 35 minutes of it was probably the best football you've seen in the last couple of years. When I turned away, and then I came back and saw the replay and said, "Oh, no, it's a mile offside," like that. And then I went into the kitchen, and my son says, "No, it's a goal." I says, "You kidding me?" I said, "What's a goal for?" He says, "It touched him." I says, "Hang on a second." I says, "No. I says, "Will you play that back?" Offside, and all day long. And I defer, and I'm old enough to remember this. Derwynne will remember this. Brian Moore, ITV commentator.
Yeah, big match.
Yeah.
He would turn around and say, if he's not interfering with play, what the hell is he doing on the field?
Yeah.
And that's he would always say that. And the guy was offside, right? He was interfering with play. And we had a farcical situation in the European Championships there in the summertime where one guy was offside at the halfway line. And the linesman kept running, didn't put his flag down. Didn't put his flag up, kept his flag down. And the ball went into the back of the net, and then he put his flag up. He ran 70 yards and then put his flag up. And I'm going, what a waste of time.
Yeah.
So we're saying that I agree with you there. I didn't see the goals. I didn't see that match at all over the weekend. I just saw the highlights of other matches. I don't know why I missed that.
The football was brilliant for fast. It took an hour to warm up, but then when it warmed up, it was really hot. It was really good.
But I saw the Italy-Spain match. I saw the Italy-Spain match tonight, and I know they're an aging team. People are saying they're an aging team, but if you're good enough, you're good enough. Italy's proved that over and over again. They are the European champions, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But somehow.
Yeah. They are. Well, I forget.
Jesus, someone doesn't sound bitter anyway.
Look, Derwynne.
Somehow,
let's try this. Look, it's not coming home a while.
Oh dear.
Scotland won over the weekend. They won 3-2. They're in second place now. You know, really, our Celtic brothers, they did well as well. Were Wales out over the weekend?
They're playing now. They're playing
Wales
tonight,
aren't they?
Oh, they're playing tonight? All right.
Yeah. It's Estonia, I think, isn't it?
They're one up against Estonia. They're one up.
Yeah, I must say good. I must say this is Monday, the 11th of October. We're taping this on from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Grimsby Town, so people might get worried about the scores and things like that. They might get confused looking back at it afterwards. But Ireland had a good win. I think Callum Robinson, for all the slagging he got a double jab for Ireland, and they were a very positive result, and 3-0. What do you think, Martin? Did you see it?
I kind of was watching it, yeah, but I felt like Ireland are playing a good brand of football, and they're actually, they're proving to be a more entertaining team to watch. Sometimes your heart is in your mouth, though, because maybe it's improving now, but they're tending to play out of defence and taking quite a lot of risks when they're such a sort of an inexperienced team at international level. Plus, a lot of their players are playing, I suppose, they're not in the first teams and Premiership teams, the clubs and stuff like that. They're playing potentially at a Championship level, League One. Like, they're still good players, but I often have my heart in my mouth when they start playing it out. I think there's a time and a place for playing out of defence. The likes of Liverpool and the various other Premier League teams, especially those in the top six, are obviously experts at it. But, you got to give them credit for their bravery and the way they set their style out and the way they play, and they're sticking to their game plan. And I hope it does work out, because I think it's nice to watch an Irish team actually playing the ball on the floor and trying to break teams down in a different way rather than a long ball and trying to win the breakdown and then all that kind of stuff. So it's refreshing to watch. It's just such a pity we don't have the caliber of player that we had before. Like, if we had the caliber of player that we had in the 80s and 90s, what kind of a team would it be now?
That won't happen again with players going to the Premiership. We have to foster and put money and resources into our own talent at home. Joe, did you see the Irish team?
No, I didn't see it. I wasn't able to get it over here, but I find it interesting. I've been through this before, right? Yeah. And when Johnny Giles got to be the manager of Ireland, we were a footballing team.
Yeah,
I mean, we got the ball down. We played. When you have the likes of Johnny Giles and Liam Brady in midfield, and you got Steve Highway and Frank and Don Givens and guys like that, the guys at the back, Paddy and all those guys could all play. And, it never ceases to amaze me what the Irish fans want. They wanted us to play good football. They wanted this, that, and the other. But then when we didn't make the World Cup or the European Championship finals, we didn't make it out the group because, unfortunately, we're trying to play football and we give up goals that were, unfortunate at the time, but we were still trying to play. And then the fans get fed up with John's style, and then they want to change for it. And then the Owen Hand comes in, and that didn't work out for us. And then Jack comes in. And Jack comes in with the long ball, and everybody embraces that and says it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But when he starts losing, the fans turn dog on him as well, and they're looking for all sorts of excuses to get out. I mean, I've seen Kenny's Dundalk team play. I saw him play Limerick up at Priory, and I mean they played nice football. I mean, they played very nice football. It was. On that night, it was a bit slow. Limerick equalised in the last minute to get a 1-1 draw out of it. But, I just find it interesting to see what the Irish people actually want. And, they turned dog on Kenny when he wasn't winning games at the beginning here. I mean, he gets slagged off right away. They don't give him any window to settle into what he wants to do. And like we're saying here, the quality of players that we've got are not the top ones, but they can still play a bit, and hopefully it works out for them. And I'd give them the benefit of the doubt more than I would, have a go at them for trying to do something that's pretty, but it's very, very difficult. Yeah. With the high pressure that teams are putting on now as well. It's no wonder Martin says that his heart's in his mouth half the time, because they're waiting for you to play that ball and then they're immediately putting pressure on it. So I hope they do well. I hope they, finishing third would be with the way things started would be a good place to be. And then hopefully by the time we get to the next stage of it, we're a little bit more comfortable with each other and with how we're going to play it.
And Derwynne, there's no pressure like that now, I'd say, presumably on Southgate since he got to the final and all of that. There's no kind of pressure on him, but there's different pressure on him in so far as it's been for England themselves. The managers are always under severe pressure anyway in England, the English soccer team manager, because they are expected to win every tournament that they enter. Unlike ourselves, we have a lash and so what, and a drink after and we grand. But in England, it's a totally different scene. I mean, you have to at least get into the last four in every tournament that you enter, at least to be considered a success. And that brings its own pressure.
Yeah, I mean, they got Hungary tomorrow night, and they reckon Wembley's a full house tomorrow night. But again, it kind of started on Saturday, straight away after that match. They go straight into the Hungary. No one's talking about Andorra. I mean, you wouldn't. You'd expect England to beat Andorra, but either way, final whistle goes, and it's now the Hungary pressure pot starts bubbling away.
Well, they should beat Hungary comfortably, shouldn't they?
You'd think so, but it's I don't think there's that many really bad teams anymore at international level.
Remember what Hungary did in the European Championships? They played well with a very limited team, Pat.
They did.
They did play well. They were in the same group as Germany, right? And they caused France problems. They caused Portugal problems. And while England will probably win 2-3-0 like that because they're playing at home, I think sometimes we don't give England the credit that they deserve at this moment. They are a very stable team. The only thing that they have a problem with is that they're a little bit, pardon the pun here, very conservative. They don't do what Ireland could do. They should go out and try and maybe beat teams, play better football. But if you look at the European Championship, it was like hold firm, then we take a chance. That's fine, but you have to remember, England were at home in every match that European Championship. It was there for the taking, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah.
Hungary, we were talking about Hungary in another dimension, Martin, that they should have been thrown out of the European Championship because of the carry on when teams are playing over in Hungary. To stamp out this appalling racism and other stuff as well caused by the supporters in Hungary.
I think you'd be very careful there, Pat, now, to be totally honest with you. If you're going to just think about
finding them a couple of €1,000 will do nothing to improve.
But hang on a second, Pat. Honestly, what are you talking about here, for argument's sake? FIFA, UEFA don't care about racism. Let's get this knock this in the head straight away, right? And I'll give you one instance of what I'm talking about here, right? England had an opportunity about 2 years ago to basically nail their colours to the mast when they were playing Bulgaria away. They were 4-0 up, and some of their players were subjected to vile abuse by Bulgarian supporters. The players went to the sideline. The English players decided to play on. That was the biggest mistake that they made then. They should have walked off there, and then they were going to get. They won the match. They were going to get awarded anyway, right?
Yeah.
But Bulgaria were fined, right? They were fined, but the fine was less than what Nicholas Bentner got for wearing Paddy Power underpants a few years previously. So let's get this into perspective. Now, if you're going to ban Hungary, you also need to ban other countries as well. right? So you just can't just say you can't lay the door at Hungary. You have to ban Bulgaria. Probably have to ban Russia. And then there was the thing about Slovakia against Wales, where the kids they were supposed to play behind closed door. Then they let kids go instead, and the kids abused the Welsh players. So there's about at least half a dozen countries out there you could ban, Pat, if you want to go down that road.
Now, we have to get parochial now, Joe, as well. Grimsby are top of the National League. Grimsby Town, they had another win. And we're keeping a watch on Grimsby because we have a legend of Grimsby on our panel, you see. That's the connection there. But I always like looking at the other leagues anyway, down below the other one. And they beat Woking 1-0, Joe. They're top of the league. And they're getting huge followers as well, big attendance as well, which is, I'd say, it must be fantastic for the club.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's this whole thing has just ignited at the right time. There was new ownership came in, and the new owners are huge Grimsby Town fans. They used to actually support the team when I was playing. So, and the following, like I've said before, the fan base now are mainly young people, and it's a huge thing for them now. And for them, they went to Altrincham last Tuesday, and they were 3-0 up, and then the referee gives a red card to a Grimsby player, and they hold on for a 3-2 win. So they seem to be. I know it's early days and there's a lot of games to be played yet, but there seems to be something really.
They're a quarter to be through, Joe. I couldn't believe it. They have 11 games played. We only have 44 games they have in the National League. 44 games. And you might be even promoted. It's just, I can't get my head around that, Well,
when I played for Grimsby, we were in the third division, and in those days you played 46 league games.
Jesus.
The year that we won the third division championship, we played 59 games. That's with FA Cup games, FA Cup replays, League Cup. We took Wolves to 2 games in the quarterfinal of the League Cup. Eventually lost at Derby. We had a squad of maybe 14 players if we were lucky. To play that many games. So
the squad rotation was thin, eh?
Yeah. It was So I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, it was pretty difficult in those days to do it, and this league is very difficult because there's only one team automatically promoted out of it.
Yeah,
the other one's going to the playoffs.
A team that I would a lot of the time in the 70s and was Barnet, and they're down at the bottom of the National League, which is a huge. Didn't Edgar Davids was managing them one time, wasn't he?
Barnet. He was. Yeah.
And Jimmy Greaves played for Barnet.
Yeah.
Jimmy Greaves played for Barnet.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
John Terry's brother played with Barnet, centre back. Yeah. Actually, just on the Grimsby Town stuff, I used to. When Joe was playing, so one of my granduncles used to drop up the programs to my house. So I used to have all those programs and I used to look through them. So I was the only one in primary school that would know who the Mariners were and where Blundell Park was. Nobody else knew who Grimsby were. I did. And I'd know all the players. So I'd know players like, I can't remember many of the defenders now, but I used to look at the match reports and I used to remember there was a guy called Ford. I think it was Tony Ford.
Yeah.
I think he was a winger.
Ford, he was a winger. Yeah. Actually, is he the only outfield player to play over 1,000 league games?
Yeah. And there was another guy called Kevin Drinkle. And I remember him because he went to Norwich.
Correct.
And I think he went to Rangers afterwards. Yeah. So I'd follow the players even when they left the club, So but yeah, it used to be good because I was always like back then we didn't have the web, we didn't have the internet, and we used to wait for BBC and Final Score. Yeah. And we'd be waiting and we'd be watching the scores coming through and we'd see but it was great times, yeah.
Yeah, there was a team called, they thought their name of the club was Partick Thistle Nil. But But you know, Captain, as you're talking about soccer, is the deal done with Newcastle for the more Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's done, isn't it?
As far as I know, it's done. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gone through, isn't it?
I cannot make any comment that would be that could be misconstrued, other than the fact that will it be any good for soccer in the long run? Not because of Saudi Arabia, but the takeover of a club by a country or people who know nothing, who have no tradition in the game and know nothing about it other than the fact it's an investment.
It's an investment, yeah. And it's not the first, you know, if you look at Manchester City, if you look at Paris Saint-Germain, you know, it's becoming now something that's more mainstream. And, you know, I've been in Newcastle. I was in Newcastle a few years ago to see them against West Ham. And they're a passionate people and passionate about their football. So I think on one hand, it'll probably bring a lot of joy to the town in that the club will become a successful club because they'll obviously buy a lot of good players and they will be on a trajectory. I can imagine they'll have a 5 or a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan. I presume at the end of the 5 years, they'll be looking at winning a Premiership title. So I think on one hand, it's going to bring a lot of success to the area and to Newcastle in general. But on the other hand, is it good for football? And is it potentially now that a Super League is only a matter of time? Because if more and more clubs are being taken over by these types of investors, you know, they will want a return on investment. And, you know, you would think a Super League is probably the thing that would help that.
And Chris, what do you think of the idea? Do you think it's a commodity now, soccer, isn't it? Professional soccer at that level is a commodity. It's a product rather than a game.
It's a business. I mean, let's be honest about it. It's not. I mean, it's what Joe argued about 15 minutes ago when he says, "What do the supporters want?" So, you know, I can remember Newcastle 25 years ago when the big Belgian Philippe Albert was there, and you had Alan Shearer there. They took Man United apart 5-0. Should have won the league under Kevin Keegan. Didn't. Okay. They played the best football for years. Didn't win the league. Haven't won a trophy since I think it was 1955 when they won the FA Cup. That's the last time I think that Newcastle lost a trophy. They're hungry. But do you know what? If you'd have told, I mean, the fact of the matter was that it was that the journalist, the Saudi Arabian journalist that was killed in Turkey, his fiance, Khashoggi, his fiance came out and says that it's shameful. I don't think one Newcastle fan would care about that if they're winning the Premiership in 3 or 4 years' time. And that's the fact. The same way as nobody cares about what Qatar have done in Paris, and nobody cares about what happens at Man City. It's just, I mean, listen. Football was always a business the last 40, 50 years. Joe would know that more than anybody else. I mean, players were discarded whenever the clubs wanted them, as what Roy Keane said years ago, as a piece of meat. That's a fact. That's where it always is. When your time is up and they want rid of you, they will get rid of you. You know what I mean? It's a bit like politics. You know what I mean? It's only going to end one way. That's the way it goes. And you mean, if you can get out with your head held high, then well done to you. That's all. But that's what soccer is like these days. It's cutthroat.
And Derwynne, before I forget it, did you buy any of the 9.5 million shares that the Glazers put up for sale? 9.5 million shares in United. I meant to ask. You don't have to tell us now if you did or not. You know, we won't.
No comment.
But that's an awful lot of shares to put up together. Is that a signal of their intent to say goodbye?
No.
Who knows? I wouldn't have thought so. It's probably more a case of just getting some more money in
They'll split those shares again, and they'll create another 10 million shares in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah.
Yeah. The amount of shares that they own in that club, that's only a pinprick of what they own. Really, I mean, they they sold 100 million worth of shares or 70 million worth of shares there a few months ago, and now they're just offloading again, and still they still have mega shares in that thing, and it's eventually, like Chris said, they'll just create more is what they'll do, and then they'll have them, and that'll be it. So I mean, the game has got to a ridiculous stage. I mean, we're talking now about Newcastle. The owner, that sheik that owns them, has a fortune of 300+ billion.
Oh my God!
300 billion. He is the richest owner
to Treaty United. They'd be flying. They'd be Champions League in Limerick.
Yeah, there you go.
And do you know what, something, Pat? And here's the thing, right? Everyone's fearing for Steve Bruce. Do you know what? I reckon Steve Bruce is probably just waiting with a bated breath on them to tell him, you know what, Steve, thanks very much, good luck. And he's going to get an 8 million quid check, and he'll probably manage a team within 6 months.
Oh yeah, yeah, he'll be back. And that's the thing with it. I mean, this is a godsend for him, because if things kept going the way they were going, he may have got fired anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But with this, he gets a golden handshake, and then, like Chris says, he'll be back in the job again. Some team that's going to be at the bottom of the league is going to need somebody to get him out of trouble. He's good at doing that, and he'll be back in the job again. So
he's an agreeable chap. To me, he looks an agreeable enough chap. That's Steve Bruce. We'll do a bit of housekeeping before we move on to another topic. Just briefly, Derwynne, the Spanish Open was won by Cabrera Bello.
Yeah.
Cabrera Bello, 19. We had a new Irishman on the scene, a redhead as well, young Murphy from Waterford, I think.
Kinsale.
Is it?
Kinsale is from.
Is he from Cork? I didn't know that.
He's from Cork, yeah. You have another one.
Another one, -11, but he did well. The interesting thing about the golf is it was a $1.5 million purse for the Spanish Open. Is a 16% to the winner. Now in America they had the Shriners Hospitals Open, which was won by what's his name? The fella from I've written down here, lads.
I can see you've done your research.
Yeah. Wrong piece of paper. Sung Jai Im. He won it, but we had another Irish golfer who finished in the top 25 there, or top 20 was Seamus Powell. He's going well at -14, -24 won it, but that's the golf. Do you see any of it over the weekend, Derwynne, or were you dipping out of it?
No, I didn't dip into it at all this weekend.
And just another bit of housekeeping before we move on is Valtteri Bottas got a rare Formula 1 win in Formula 1. And of course, our friend Mr. Hamilton was penalised 10 or 12 places on the grid, but he did well to finish fifth. So.
Can I just say something here now, right? I mean, this is not a nationalist thing or whatever, okay? Don't get me wrong. I watched for the first time the full race since, I say, the mid-80s. Okay. Yeah, because my young lad talked me into it. Okay. That's the best way to describe it. Okay. And I have to say, I've seen it happen before, but I invested 2 hours into this, right?
What?
I did. I invested an hour and a half, 2 hours into the whole charade of the Formula 1 as it is now, right? And I just found, honestly, Hamilton's conduct towards his own pit extraordinary. I thought, you know what? That video that voice release of what he said to his guy in the crew, in any other business he'd be up against HR.
Yeah.
I thought, he basically refused to come in, and then when they took him in, he then berated him for doing so. And I thought that was extraordinary, and it probably shows me a glimpse of why the man is not really liked.
I know, yeah. That's true. We didn't touch on that before. We just concentrated on...
I found it was extraordinary the way he behaved towards his own team. I find that, you know what I mean? If you're looking for team spirit, you definitely didn't get it with him. And I mean, to be honest with you, it would have... the problem what that does is that the crew in future races, because it's such a tight race for the championship this year, the crew are now going to be second guessing. We don't want to be seen as offending Lewis.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if any of you guys have watched the Schumacher film on Netflix, but it is definitely worth watching. It is worth watching how he embraced all the members of the team when he was with Ferrari. When he joined, like, the team had a car that was not competitive, but he managed to build relationships with everybody involved in the team, from the guys that were, basically making tea and coffee, to the guys that were actually the engineers and the mechanics and so on and so forth. So they all knew each other on a first term basis, and that's what he did to actually, eventually achieve success with Ferrari and win the championship. So, there is parallel, there's the behaviors of these guys can, be the difference between, being liked, not being liked, being, and I suppose when I grew up, it was generally the media in the UK that you would read when it came to Formula One. So it was very much against Michael Schumacher.
Mm-hmm.
But, I suppose looking at it now, through my eyes now, and looking at, he was portrayed in a light that probably wasn't true.
The one I loved was between Hunt and Lauda. That in that middle 70s there, when they were vying with each other for the final. There was a film made about it, wasn't there? With Hunt and Lauda?
Yeah,
Rush. It was
Rush.
78, yeah.
Yeah, Rush. They made a film called Rush.
Yeah. Hunt was such a fantastic character for Formula One. He was just all action, all out. That's it. Everything out in the open,
I caddied for James Hunt when I was a kid. Yeah, and he always took Oscar, the Alsatian, golfing.
Yeah.
And he was a member at Sunningdale Golf Club, which is a really posh place.
Oh, it is, yeah.
You're allowed to take your dog around the golf course, but it has to be on a lead. And every time I caddied for him, the dog would just be all over Sunningdale. It was no lead in sight. And members would come up and say, Hunt, your dog's not on a lead. And he would literally turn around and go, that's incredibly observant of you. Now piss off. And literally just didn't give a monkey's cuss about it. He honestly didn't give a damn. He used to so my dad used to breed budgies and birds and stuff like that. And James Hunt was a massive budgie guy.
Oh yeah.
He bred budgies and everything else. And my dad would come and pick me up, and he'd stand in the car park talking to my dad about budgies. And then he'd literally say, like, he'd look at his watch and he'd go, I've got to go, Stan. I've got some birds waiting for me. And my dad, for years, was convinced that he was going off to buy budgies.
No.
I'd sit in the car and go, Dad, he's going off with some blondes.
Yeah, that was what they say.
Honestly, I've got to go, Stan, because I've got some birds waiting for me. And my dad would go, oh, right, okay. And like, get in the car and go. And he would go, oh, I bet he's going to buy some nice budgies or something. You're like, going, no, Dad.
No, you don't know. No.
Birds is women. That's like, he's off with some birds.
Isn't that like...
No, don't be silly. And you're like, Dad.
That's like a greyhound trainer going and saying, I'm going to see a man about a dog. Well, it's not that kind of dog what he was looking at.
Yeah.
But he was such a character.
Did you give him the CD of Rush at all, did you?
No.
Dead that stage, Jesus. I think he's dead.
I don't think I'll ever forget that. Stan, I've got to go because I've got some birds to go and see. And he literally, my dad, oh, right, okay. And he'd get in the car and it would be like, oh, I bet he's off buying some nice birds. And you're like, Dad.
You don't know.
You've got it. I'm like 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
And just trying to explain to my dad what it's all about. And you're like, Dad.
If those birds could talk, imagine. Anyway, what about our friend Derwynne, our friend Tom Brady over there in the United States that's flying the flag for the Tampa Bay? He did it again over the weekend.
Yeah.
I did 411 yards and 5 touchdowns. What was it? 45-17, they beat the Dolphins. Tom Brady, we're fine Tom Brady because of the fact that he's in the game for so long, and he's such a genius. He really is in any sport. It's a testament of the man, of his attitude, And I think, as you were talking there, Chris and lads earlier on about not like this man, never wanted to be and never insisted on being the most, getting the biggest salary in any club. He was always a team player, a club man and all. If you read behind the scenes of Tom Brady, you know, never wanted this. Oh, and there's the $100 million man over there. You must look after him. Nothing like that. And the longevity of the man is a testament to his attitude to the game. I mean, I'm not a big fan of NFL, but I just love watching good players playing in any sport. Martin, did you get to see any of the NFL? Or?
I haven't, Pat. The last game I watched was the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah.
And even then, I was just like in awe of the guy. Like, I just couldn't believe how he brought that team to win a Super Bowl. It just shows the actual how a kind of a leader can rally a team, and for guys to actually play above themselves almost in their quest for success. Like, I just can't get over how good he is, and how good he just seems to defy nature. As guys get older, like, you find like, oh God, I can't move as fast. My reflexes aren't as good. I haven't got the same power. He just defies everything and continues to actually excel in the field. And all these young guys coming up behind him, and yet he's top dog still. Like, I cannot believe the guy.
You see, Martin, what he done is completely opposite to what our character in the Formula One has done. Right? He brought fellas into to Tampa with him that used to play with him in New England, like Gronkowski. Took him out of retirement and said, "Look, you can be the man. You can do it for me." And he bigged them up and says, and instead of saying going to other fellas, he went to fellas that he could trust and knew that we could do the job for them. Plus, he knows his body is slowing down. However, he's able to read the game. He knows when to let it go, and he knows when to take it on. So he knows what to do, right? But when he has that level of protection in front of him, it makes his job a lot easier. And again, I think the most important part of this is that he has remained fairly injury-free. And that's the massive difference in any sport. When you look at like R.G. Snyman from Munster yesterday, who's now gone down with the ACL in the same leg. It's a re-rupture. I mean, at 26, you're now talking about a guy who may not be allowed to play rugby again.
You won't play rugby.
Because that's the way it's going these days. I mean, you mentioned about Nicky Lauda. Nicky Lauda would not have been able to race when you consider that his head was, the blood was soaking through his bandages and his helmet in those races in '78 after he had his injuries. There's no way he'd be allowed into the seat, right? So it's a completely different way sport is now compared to what it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. And but the difference is before I'll just finish this, Pat. The difference is that the man he's relatively injury free, right? He's never had the setbacks other guys have. I mean, I was watching briefly last night Roethlisberger for Pittsburgh, and he looks a broken man. I mean, if somebody should really need to take him aside and say, look, you're what, 38, 40 now at this stage, I think your race is run. But Brady can keep going because he feels fit, and once you feel fit and you can do all the tests and whatever, and I have no doubt that all those NFL teams have the best of medical knowledge and equipment, that if he's still cutting the mustard, they're going to keep him doing it.
Now, before we finish on NFL, there's a highlights program on, I think on Monday nights on BBC for an hour and 10 minutes or something, and that's where I pick up my little tips on it. And an excellent film, Brad Pitt starred in it, called Moneyball. Moneyball is a film, lads, a DVD. We want to watch any night. You might think it's boring. It's it's all American football, but it's a superb film. The final whistle is before I go on theirmedia.tv, info@theirmedia.tv is our email. Now, Joe, I'll go to you first on this, Joe. There's been a video going around, a thing about fighting an under 15 game over the weekend caused mayhem when parents and officials. Now, you've coached, I presume you've coached youngsters and young ones and smallies and all down through the years. I know I used to take my own young lads off 30 years ago now nearly, but I used to take them all to the underage matches. I don't know, I never noticed it so much myself, maybe they just decided that don't bother coming anymore. Maybe that was their way of telling me to go away. Maybe I didn't notice myself being irate on the sideline. But Joe, is it a serious problem?
Well, I mean, I read about this morning as well, and I just can't believe that people allow that to actually happen in games. And when I'm talking about people, I'm talking about coaches and the people that are on the sideline, because the one thing that I could never understand was people getting into fights in games. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't help anything. Ice hockey is probably the only game that
Each other.
The gloves come off and they lay into each other and that's it. That's the highlight. But for the rest of it, I just don't get it. I mean, growing up for me, the biggest sin for us growing up was retaliation. You cannot retaliate. The referee is there to take care of business, and if you retaliate, you're the one that's going to find yourself in trouble. The person that started it is not going to find yourself in trouble. And you also though have a duty as a person that's guiding these young people to make them realize that it's okay to be competitive in a game without stepping over the bounds and stepping into taking the game into the law into your own hands. That's what the referee is there for, and let them take care of that. So, I mean, I don't know if it's a big thing that's happening at home, but I can tell you this much, and I've probably coached over 1,000 games at the youth level. I have never seen a fight, a mass brawl in all the time that I've been involved in that. And if something like that happened, I would have been the first one on the field to break it up. I would have probably got thrown out because I'm not allowed onto the field. But I would have been, right there to stop it, because it has no place in the game. There's no place in any game, in my opinion.
Martin, you've coached, you're involved yourself in underage yourself, Martin.
Yeah.
The language is one thing, and I don't condone that. I'm just saying a language won't break your leg, won't break your skull or put you into hospital, but it can be a catalyst to drive people mad altogether on the sideline now.
Yeah, but like in these sports, like there's codes of conduct, there's codes of behavior in both, like in both soccer, issued by the FAI and in the GA as well. And sometimes I think like people need to sit down and read them and actually practice what's actually written down. And like I think the GA use a slogan called "Give respect, get respect," and people need to kind of take this in, because like obviously social media has actually brought this to the fore. Sometimes we wouldn't hear of these things happening because unless you're at the game, you don't know about it. But social media has really brought this to the fore. And this isn't the first incident I've seen on social media where there's been the crowd and the players are involved in altercations. And who'd be a referee now, so something needs to be done, and an example needs to be made of someone or something or some club or some organization, so that this is not something that's going to happen again. Because there were 15-year-old kids in that field, and there was adults running onto the field throwing punches and throwing all sorts of stuff. And it's for me, that's the guards need to be involved. That's not something for the GA to sort out. There should have been guards there. People should have been arrested. That's assault. And it needs to stop, because somebody's going to get hurt. And
I know in Wicklow, and down the road from where that happened, just before I go anywhere else, just to tell, one of the coaches that was involved in an incident like that before, he was fighting on the line, was a guard himself. He happened to be a coach of one of the teams. So I mean, you have a lot of stuff. It's hard to know. Derwynne, of course, you play you've played in a civilized game where everything is fantastic and they're all really nice to each other, and we'll toddle off to the 19 boys, and you wouldn't see anything like that now, would you, growing up? No?
No, you didn't see much of that. But do you not think it's a little bit of sort of where we are as a world, if you like? The world's kind of gone a bit wrong, hasn't it?
Yeah.
That sort of, to have that as the reaction to run on the pitch and start fighting and all the rest of it, to me, that's a little bit of what goes on. That if you do that in public, it's probably going on at home, isn't it?
Well, definitely, yeah.
If that's the accepted thing, then it sort of, the culture's wrong, isn't it?
It is. And Chris, yeah, you were involved in the local GA club for a while, but
I was chairman for 2 years, Joe, and I've seen instances like this every day of the week. You know what I mean? I mean, the video that was shown was taken from a very shaky camera, so it's very difficult to see what was happening, who was hitting what. But let me tell you something, and Martin may agree with me, he may not agree with me. The problem here stems with one, parents unable to control themselves. Two, the lack of people coming forward in sport these days to be referees. People who criticize, and I know this in my own club, people will criticize referees. And I've turned around and said to them, well, why do you think we have referees like that? It's because no one else will get involved. You have to commend the referee for doing it, because no one else, and you have to remember, without referees, you've got no game. Simple as that. And I remember being at meetings where I castigated county players for Clare, giving about referees, and I says, I says, you should be ashamed of yourself. I've said that to them. I says, you cannot criticize referees like that until you've actually done it yourself. Okay. And the third thing is the ambivalence to all this by county boards. And this is the problem, because I know I've been there, I've been at these meetings, and I will give you an example of what happens at these county boards meetings. We had an incident with our junior football team. Now, for Derwynne, what I mean by junior would be your kind of like your second adult team. Okay, they're not kids. Right, okay, right, they're not kids. Their junior would be like your second adult team. They're not your best adult team. Would be like your second or third adult team. And there was an incident that happened where there were two of our fellas that were sent off in a match, and what seemed to happen was a young lad who was probably about maybe 17, 18. He was held up against the fence, was getting a couple of punches, and a couple of lads kind of decided to intervene and take the law into their own hand. They were sent off. A couple of our guys in the sideline got a bit abusive and blah, blah, blah. So the county board here in Clare sent us, they basically sent us to a meeting, a disciplinary meeting, for failing to control our players and failing to control our supporters. Now that's, in honesty, that is very emotive language coming from an authority like that, because basically it is saying, as a club, you're just letting anything happen free fall. So as chairman of the club, I was duty bound with the manager to go to the meeting, and the county board secretary, who I'm, without naming names, but people would know, he is still the county board secretary.
We all know him.
Right, but I never mention any names. That's the key point, okay?
No,
so you know who he is, but you know who he is, okay? Right. Yeah. So basically, I just turned around and said to him, and I was only going to say his name there. I says, listen, what's this all about? I says, look, don't worry about it. I says, what do you mean, don't worry about it? You have mentioned failing to control our players, failing to control our supporters. I says, now for the two lads that got sent off, they were told to appear. They haven't turned up. You can throw the book at them. No, but we don't want to do that. Well, what are we doing here then? We just want you to bring into meeting. And what are you going to tell me? Well, we just want you to bring into meeting. I says, okay, so what are we meeting about? I says, look, lads, I'm going home. Simple as that. I'm going home. This is a meeting over nothing. I says, you either throw the book at the lads, or you throw the book at the club, or you just forget about it. And that's the problem. But you have, Martin, they want to have these meetings, but they're only ticking boxes until the GAA and other organizations get serious, until someone gets seriously injured. Right, and we all laugh at these stories about guys getting stuck in the boot of a car or guys locked into their own dressing room, until one guy may have an anxiety problem which could lead to worse, and then you have a court case on your hand.
But the final whistle is the program, and we have an email, info@dermedia.tv. Now, before we finish up, Martin, we're being parochial here again, local. Sorry, lads. But I think he might have been. Is it Patrick Swell? And I put away my piece of Patrick Swell and Kilmallock.
I was hoping you wouldn't bring this up.
Is it Patrick Swell and Kilmallock are contesting the county final? Am I right?
So like my local club had been a Piersheek, so we were beaten by Patrick Swell yesterday, and and Kilmallock beat Doon. So I suppose going into the semi-finals, the Piersheek and Doon would have been favourites to contest the final, but it didn't work out that way. And it just shows, like in sport, like sometimes anything can happen. Not sometimes, a lot of the time anything can happen. So it was a win for Patrick Swell, who beat New Piersheag, and a win then for Kilmallock, who beat Doon. So they both now meet in the final on the 24th of October.
That's the bank holiday weekend.
Yeah, so that should be a very, very, very close game. I don't think they've been in the final to face each other since the 90s. So, which is amazing considering the volume of county titles both clubs have won. So, it should be a really, really entertaining game, and there should be, you know, I don't think there'll be anything spared in it. Both clubs have a rich tradition, so it'll be a good game.
They'll want to bring along an awful lot of spare hurleys, will they, Martin?
Yeah, and like and nowadays you've hurleys made from bamboo and ash and the whole lot. So
right,
you might have to bring a mix of brands.
Before we finish, I suppose next weekend we'll be back to the bread and butter stuff of Cristiano Ronaldo waiting for a pass from McTominay. Maybe he might get it, or someone else, stuff like that. In that right there, I don't know who they're playing next weekend. I forgot to look it up. But anyway, from this edition, lads, of I'm still thinking of the story about the birds and Hunt.
Well, your research is gone for the birds anyway, that's for sure.
It's all over. It's all over. It's all over. From Derwynne Honan, from Chris Price.
They think it's all over. It is not.
Well, it's all over now. And from Martin Moore and Joe Moore is over there, lads. Till we meet again next Monday. Until we meet again, thank you for your time, and it's much appreciated. And from all of us here, good evening and good luck.
Cheers. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, boys.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care, lads.
Take care.
Talk to you.
Good luck.